everybody, it is Brian here at Nurse Hub. It is so good to have you with me. Today's lesson is going to be on simplifying fractions. Super important, so you ready to go? Hey everybody, we are about to go over simplifying fractions on the T's with me, Brian. If we look at our goal for today's lesson, our goal is that we will be able to put fractions into their simplest form. Our first key vocabulary word is to simplify, which means we're going to create an equivalent fraction using smaller numbers. So, for example, if we see the fraction 2/4, if we're going to simplify it and put it in its simplest term, the smallest possible numbers, that would be the same thing as 1/2. And we'll go over how to do that later. 2 is the simplest form, and that's an equivalent fraction using the smallest possible numbers. So say, for example, we had 4/8, which we know is equal to 2/4. But if we look, 2/4 is not the smallest way that we can write this fraction. The simplest form is 1/2. Why? Because it's the smallest possible numbers that we can use to show this value. So 1/2 is our simplest form. Vocabulary word number 3. It is a factor. That is whole numbers that multiply together to get you a product. So say we wanted to look at the factors of 8. And we'll go over different methods in a little while. But when you think of numbers that multiply to get you 8, that's 1 times 8, 2 times 4. Now, remember, this is whole numbers. Otherwise, there's an infinite amount of numbers that would be able to be multiplied together to give you 8. We are just looking at the whole numbers. So if we looked at the factors of 8, we write them in order: 1, 2, 4, and 8. Here we have the term greatest common factor, or the GCF, as you may see it. Now, this is the largest whole number factor 2 or more numbers have in common. So when you hear the word greatest common factor, math terms will literally tell you exactly what you're looking for. So in this case, you see the word greatest, so we're going to look for the largest. Common means shared, and factor means numbers that multiply together to get the number that you're working with. So if we were going to look for the GCF, or the greatest common factor, let's say of 12 and 16, we are first going to write out the numbers that multiply together to get you 12 or 16. I'm going to show you a different method later on, but let's go with how some of you may be thinking about it at the moment. So we know that there's 1 times 12, there is 2 times 6, and there is 3 times 4. That is all of our factors of 12. 16 is 1 times 16, 2 times 8, and we have 4 times 4. Now, we might have common factors that I will look at in yellow. So we see that 1 is a common factor, 2 is a common factor, and 4 is a common factor. This 4 also counts, but it can stay to the side. But if we're looking for the greatest common factor, or the GCF, what is the largest number that 12 and 16 share in common? That's going to be 4. As always, when we work with our fractions, we talk about the numerator and the denominator. So the numerator is going to be the number on top of the fraction, and the denominator is the number that's on the bottom of the fraction. Sometimes when we think of denominator, we think of the word down, since they both start with D. Whatever helps you, but know that we are going to be referring to the actual names, numerator and denominator, not what's on the top or what is on the bottom. So key point, in order to simplify, we must divide the numerator and denominator by the same number. So for example, if we had 5/20, in order to simplify, I have to divide the same number from the numerator and the denominator. So for example, I can't say 5 works here and 4 works here, because then I would get 1/5, and that's not the same size. we could actually figure that out because we're not dividing by 1. Now, when you ask yourself in division, what do you divide by, or what can you divide by to keep anything the same? You divide by 1. So if we think about what we're dividing is really a fraction, and I divide both things by 5, this really means 5 divided by 5, which is equal to 1 whole. So we're actually dividing this fraction by 1 whole if we divide the numerator and denominator by the same number. Now that we know why we do this, let's just continue through. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 20 divided by 5 is 4. So 5/20 is equal to 1/4. We simplified. Key point number 2. To put in simplest form in one step, because some of us love to do it in just one step, we're going to divide the numerator and denominator by their greatest common factor. So let's say, for example, we started with 10 over 20, or 10/20. Sometimes we can think of numbers that we just know to divide by. I know I can divide by 2, divide by 2. That gives me 5/10. But I know that's not fully simplified. So I could divide by 5, and that would give me 1/2. That was multiple steps and took a really long time. But if I had actually divided by the greatest common factor of 10 and 20, which you would come to find out is 10, we would have had 10/20 divided by 10 equals 1, divided by 10 equals 2, and we would have gotten 1/2 that way. So can you do it in one step? Absolutely. If you have a greatest common factor that comes to mind. If not, you can follow another method, and we'll go over that too. Just like I said, you can also choose a factor you know goes into both numbers and divide the numerator and denominator by that number. You can then keep going until you hit simplest form. This is really helpful when you have larger numbers that you're not sure about. So say you had 84 over 100. I don't want to sit and do all the factors of 100, right? We might be here all day. And that's going to waste a lot of your time and your brain power. Instead, I know that these are both even numbers, so I'm going to divide by 2. So that gives me 42 over 50. I again know that these are both even numbers. So that's going to give me 21 over 25. Now I have smaller numbers. I can think, okay, I have 1 times 21, 3 times 7. That are all that goes into 21. The only greatest common factor that they both share is the number 1, because neither 3, 7, or 21 goes evenly into 25. So this would be simplest form. So again, divide by numbers you know are going to work. The only difference is it may take up more space. That's all. And if it helps you, then absolutely run with it. For a fraction is in simplest form when the greatest common factor of the numerator and denominator is 1. So let's look at how did I know before that 21/25 was in simplest form. So if we look at the factors of 21, that's 1 times 21, and I'm going to show you this method shortly, and you have 3 times 7. 25, I had 1 times 25, and I had 5 times 5. If you look, they don't share 21, or 7, or 3, or 5, or 25. The greatest common factor that both numbers have in common is the number 1. Therefore, this number is in the simplest form. So why do we do this? When we simplify fractions, we're going to end up with smaller numbers that are so much easier to use. So for example, what's easier to think about? 375/400 or 15/16? 15/16 is going to be much easier for adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. I know that I don't want to be multiplying by 375 if I do not have to. So Simplification is going to be so much easier and really, really save you a lot of time. We have come to our sample questions. As you know, try out the questions on your own. See if you're able to get them. Pause the video, work through. If you need extra help or lessons, then you know that right there, you hit play and you'll see exactly what you need to. So let's get right to them. So we are going to put 12/16 into simplest form. We are going to follow the method of using the greatest common factor. Now, we did look at this number earlier, so let's revisit our ideas. See if you can do this part on your own. So if we look at the factors of 12, I'm going to show you what we call the rainbow method. That means that you know that it's 1 times 12, and you split them apart. This helps keep your numbers in numerical order. Then we're going to go to the next number, which is 2. And I know that 2 works because it's an even number, and it's 2 times 6. Notice we're working our way in, keeping our numbers in order from least to greatest. Then we have our numbers 3 and 4. Now, when you come to the next number, we just tried 3, 4 is next, it's already there, you know you're done. So let's look at 16. We know that we can do 1 times 16. 16 is an even number, so 2 is going to work. That's 2 times 8. And we have 4 times 4. Now, you don't have to write the 4s twice. You can if you want to. If a question asks you what are the factors of this number and it has doubles, but the doubles don't show up, that's fine. We normally don't write a double when we write out our factors just because we already know it is a factor. We don't have to write it twice. So if we look for the greatest common factor, we see that the largest number they have in common is the number 4. So that means we take our fraction from before, we look at 12 over 16, we divide both of these numbers by the greatest common factor. 12 divided by 4 is 3, 16 divided by 4 is 4. 3/4 is going to be our simplest form. Another good indicator that you have gotten into simplest form is that if you have two numbers that are next to each other on the number line, so if we had a number line and we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 and 4 are next to each other on a number line, if that happens in a fraction, it is automatically going to be in simplest form. Just always works that way. Next, we are going to put 32/48 into simplest form, and I'm going to show you another method of setting up your factors called the table method. Why is it called the table method? Because you make a table. See, y'all got it. So 32, I know that I'm going to start with 1 times 32. 32 is an even number, so I know 2 works. That's going to be 2 times 16. 3 is not going to work because 3 goes into 30, then 33. Then we have 4 times 8. 5 doesn't work. 6 won't work if you count by 6s. 7 doesn't work, and we already have 8 here, which means we are done. So next, we're going to look at 48. Same idea. 1 and what it's multiplied by. So 1 times 48. 2 times 24. It's even, so that works. 3, it is going to work if you need to do it on the side. You could also do your quick long division. That's 3 and 16. I have 4 times 12. Again, long division. Do that if you need to. 5 won't work because it ends in an 8. We have 6 works. 6 times 8. After 6 comes the number 7. That doesn't work. 8 is next. We already have it, so we are done. So if we look, we see that 16 is our greatest common factor. So we take our fraction. We have 32 over 48. We're going to divide both of these numbers by 16. Now, some of you may be like, ugh, I don't feel like dividing by 16. Well, guess what? You already did it. 16's partner is 2 for 32. So 32 divided by 16 is 2. 48, already did it by 16. 3, 2/3. That gives us our simplest form. Again, you'll see that 2 and 3 are next to each other on the number line. Therefore, they're also going to be automatically in simplest form. All right, we have 2 and 14/28 into simplest form. Now, we're going to show you two different ways that this can happen. So you may see this in different ways. Know that you may need to do either one of these options. The first part is to only look at your fractional piece. So say we just have to simplify 14/28. So we look at our factors of 14 and we look at our factors of 28. So 14, that's 1 times 14, 2 and 7. We don't need all that space. So now we can go to 28. That's 1 times 28, split it in half. That's 2 times 14. 3 doesn't work, and we have 4 times 7. 5 does not work, 6 does not work. So if we see here, we see the greatest common factor for both of these is 14. So if we take 14/28 and we divide both pieces by 14, we have 14 divided by 14 is 1, 28 divided by 14 is 2, and then we bring this 2 over, so we're left with 2 and 1/2. Now, we may also already have to put this number into a mixed number. So in case you see this, some of you may jump to do this. You may end up doing this here. 2 times 28 is 56, plus 14 is 70, and you may end up with 70 over 28. Not the most ideal. I would do this part first and then convert into a improper fraction if you needed it, but I can show you what to do here. So 70 over 28, these numbers may be a little bit large, so we may not know what goes into both of these first, but they are both even, so we can divide both of these by 2. So 70 divided by 2 equals 35. 28 divided by 2 is 14. Now it clicks for me. I know my multiples. I know my factors of 7. I know 7 is going to go into both of these numbers. 35 divided by 7 is 5. 14 divided by 7 is 2. So I get 5/2. Same idea, but just one is an improper fraction, one is a mixed number. Only thing I can tell you to do is pay attention to what the question asks of you to do. For this one, we are going to put 5 and 72/100 into simplest form, except this time we're really just going to work on the fractional piece. If we need the improper fraction answer, we can do that at the very end. So again, we're going to look at 72 over 100. Now, I don't know about you, but I do not want to write out all the factors of 72 and all the factors of 100. They're just larger numbers. There's a lot of factors. So it may not be the most time-effective method, but I do see that they're both even numbers. So that's my first start, is to divide by 2. So that's going to give me 36 over 50. Some of you may say we're simplified, but you have to ask, are both of these even? If they are, then you can keep simplifying. So divide by 2, divide by 2. That's going to give us 18 over 25. Now, this may be easier for you to start to think about factors of these numbers. So if I think about factors of 18, that's 1, 18, 2 times 9, 3 times 6. Now, one quicker method to look is looking, does 18 go into 25? No. Does 9 go into 25? No. Does 6? No. 3? No. 2? No. So we probably have a pretty good idea that our answer is simplified, but let's prove it the way I showed to you. So we have 1 times 25, and we have 5 times 5. 25 is not a common factor, neither of these 5s. We're left with just a common factor of 1, which means we are in simplest form. All right, here. So we end up with a doozy to finish. We have 225 500ths, and we're going to put it into simplest form. Again, this is why we talk about choosing a number we know is going to work and not doing always the greatest common factor, because we're going to sit here forever if we're going to do 225 and factors of 500. So if we take 225 500ths, I see that both of them end in a 5 and a 0, which means that I know 5 is going to work for both. They're not both even, so 2 is not going to work here. So if you have an even and an odd, also do not assume that it is simplified. Try other numbers that you think are going to work. So if we divide these by 5, divide by 5, I know that 500 divided by 5 is definitely going to be 100. I know that 5 goes into 100 20 times. So 20 times gets me to 100. Another 20 times, that's 40, gets me to 200. And 5 goes into 25 5 times. So that's going to give me 45. You could do this another way. You could have done the long division, but figure out ways that numbers work for you. Split them up into pieces. Help yourself out to tackle those. I also know, again, that these end in a 5 and a 0, so 5 is still going to work. So I'm going to divide both of these by 5 again. So that's going to give 45 divided by 5 is 9, and 100 divided by 5 is 20. These are much smaller, more manageable numbers to check to see if it's in simplest form. So if we look at the factors of 9, we have 1 times 9 and 3 times 3. For 20, I have 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. So there's no 9, no 3s, no 20, no 10, no 5, no 4, no 2. So because 1 is the greatest common factor, this is going to be simplest form. If you wanted to know what you should have done before, if you look here, because you divided by 5 twice, we'd flip it around, multiply those two 5s together. The GCF was actually 25. So in case that question ever gets asked and you weren't sure how to go back and find it, that's exactly what you could have done. All right, congratulations. You have finished simplifying fractions. It is your turn to go practice these. Try these on your own. Simplifying fractions is going to be so important and essential for all of our fraction work, for all of our work with percents, with proportions, ratios. So really make sure you understand this topic. And I can't wait to work with you soon. Good luck.
Y'all, that was wild, but congratulations on crushing another lesson here at Nurse Hub. You should be proud and then continue working to make sure you fully understand everything that you just watched. Remember, practice is the only thing that we need to make ourselves better at all of these topics. Good luck, and I hope to see you soon.